Hello once again, and welcome to part 12 of my Wharfhead Copyright channel. This episode is going to be dedicated to the statement from the judge. It's a summing up statement of his decision upon my case. One thing I would like to point out about this document is that the foundation of all that summing up is based on the fact that it's practically, the judge says it's impossible for me to remember back 50 years with any accuracy to remember every single detail that I did. He states this in Article 17 of this document. The judge is summing up. There it is. And he goes on to say, basically, it's been judged in court that people have problems remembering a lot earlier than that, sort of 20 years ago and 25 years, that's what he's sort of asserting. And he's also reading various cases. You can look at it and decide for yourself. And also, Mr. Speck, when he cross-examined me in court, this was the foundation of his cross-examining, that you couldn't possibly remember this in detail, what you did, how you did it, and all this sort of thing. Just to discredit me and to make me look a liar, as he tried to make me look a liar with the Marshall tape. And he also tried to make the lad from the painting competition look a liar as well. And he made Ron look stupid because he threw a curved ball at Ron and put something in his statement which Ron never put in there. We should have really asked to check the statement, but you don't think about these things when you're in court, do you? The point is, I have got an impeccable memory, and they don't seem to realise this, and I can talk about it and say, oh yeah, I've done this, I've done that. But the thing that I can prove this with is something that Bonita Trimmer pointed out to me about in one of her witness statements. And the thing that proves all my memory is impeccable and brilliant. I sound as though I'm bragging, don't I? But I've got to put the point across to you. Is this my book? The book that I wrote in 2013. When I wrote this book, it was another 3 years before I found the documentation at Dave's. So you can more or less say 5 years from when I started writing the book. I started writing the book around about 2010. It was published in 2013. I'll just show you the front cover because it tells you the publishing date on there. You can see that. That's the publishing information. And I'll show you a bit of fun in it as well. This is my weird family, my family tree, my weird family, and all the stories in the book about the weird happenings and the strange things that went on in the house. But the main thing I want to point out to you is this, that this book goes back to when I was 4. I mean, there's an article in here which I'll point out to you. It was my memories from 2013 of what happened in 1952. Well, I'd be 4 or 5 by then. And the book narrates from that point onwards all my birthdays forward through till the late 70s, 80s, 90s, present day. So my memory went back not 50 years, it goes back 60 years. So what in actual fact this book does, it actually disses all that evidence from Mr. Speck and all that statement from the judge. It basically undermines the whole summing up of the case and makes it sound ridiculous through the proof of this book. there's two things that the summing up relies on, and that's the weakness of my memory, the lack of my memory, or my memory. And the other thing is, you'll find there's a lot of coincidences in this judge's statement. Too many coincidences for my liking, I would have thought for yours as well. But as we go through, well, he'll point them out himself. He talks about coincidence this, coincidence that. And the couple of curved balls that they spec through in court, making Ron look a fool, making the chap from the painting competition look a liar, and sort of twisting the story to make me look a liar as well, which is what they're doing. Here's one of the pages, you can read it. It's basically, in detail, it's telling a story of when I was sitting outside the house playing with my whip and top, which I'd made out of a stick and a bootlace. And I was playing there, and the top was off one of those old Saxon pop. Remember the stone Saxon pop bottles? You probably wouldn't if you was, unless you was my age. And you could make a top out of that and whip it around. Anyway, the story narrates on and goes to say that I was whipping the top, and all of a sudden this guy comes up to me, black guy comes up to me, stands over me with brimmed hat, suitcase, smart suit, looks at me, blocks the shadow of the sun, and because he blocked the shadow of the sun, I couldn't see what he was. And then when my eyes dilated, I opened, I could see the darkness of the fellow, and I thought it was the coalman. This chap bent down and asked me something. I was that frightened, I couldn't even answer him what he wanted to know. I suppose he wanted to know where he was, really. And I ran off into the shelter. Yeah, we had an air raid shelter. You can read all about it in this book, all these stories. We had an air raid shelter in the garden from the war. We used to use it to store our books from when we used to go down the tip, the rubbish tip at Bushbury, when it was about 4, 5, 6, me and Ron, that is. I remember I hid in there because I thought he was going to put me in that suitcase and take me to Robinson's jam factory. But that's the way you think as kids, isn't it? But the point is, the story basically starts, well, it starts a bit earlier than that. So it shows that I have got a really good memory of what happened, and that was 11 years before the painting competition. The entry form and everything, the painting competition. So if I had no problems reading and writing about when I was 4, 5, up till when I was 20 or 30, why would I have a problem about recalling all the information from the painting competition? And don't forget, it wasn't 50 years. My memory hadn't got to go back 50 years anyway, because in 79, when I wrote the letter to Wolves, obviously my mind was jogged again, and I'd only got to remember back 17 years, so obviously it was instilled in my brain then. Obviously the Bernard Brett and the Arthur Evans I couldn't remember, but I knew where the painting competition was. I knew where it was, but I didn't know where it was in the papers. So that's why I had to search the archives. I know which papers were. I mean, I come from Wolverhampton. It didn't as I come from Manchester. I live in Wolverhampton, the painting competition of Wolverhampton. And the judge tries to say that it wasn't the same Bernard Brett and it was a different painting competition, but you've only got to put the link of Jackson, Brett and Arthur Evans together, and there you go, and then Jackson going to Wolves and flogging me logo. If there ain't a link there, what is? The point being this is, they said, well, you should have progressed with your with the case in 1979, but in 1979 there was no internet, no mobile phones and stuff. There was no way of obtaining information except for the library. And I certainly wouldn't have found any information regarding the painting competition. And I wouldn't have found out about Brett and all the other people and all the information that I did find out in late 2015, early 2016, which led me to bring my case to court. So that in itself was a bit sort of stupid, wasn't it? It's a bit of a stupid statement. And it completely undermines the main foundation of the judge's assessment of my case, and Mr. Speck's grillings in the court when he based all of his the foundation of his defence on that knowledge of me not being able to remember. Now, on page 37 of this judge's statement, Mr. Speck goes on to talk to the judge, and he calls me a liar. Now, I've tried all the way through this. I've tried to avoid calling people liars because I don't like the word. But this sort of gives me carte blanche to respond to Mr. Speck's actions and retaliate in the same fashion, and I think I will. As I said to you before, early on in some of my statements, this Specky was a weird fella. He'd stand on his one leg when he was screaming at you, and another sort of imagination in my mind. There's a cockerel when he's cock crowing and screaming, you know, cock-a-doodle-doo, and he'd sort of lunge at you on his one leg, and it was really weird. Come to think of it, my wife, Jean, she did a witness statement, but she couldn't attend the court because of her illness. If this Speck had called Jean a liar, she'd have turned round and given a black country eye and knocked him off his perch. Because these lasses, you know, from the black country, a lot of us have married them, but they've got a temper, you know. I know, my wife has as well. She won't be called a liar by anybody. And it's a despicable word, in it, lie. I mean, I don't like the idea of calling Speck a liar, but I think I'm going to have to from now on to prove my point, to show, to reciprocate basically, of what he does and what he's done. So, if I do mention the word lie in the next few episodes, blame him. When you think of it, that statement from the judge and from Speck, it undermines all autobiographers, all great people who've written autobiographies about their lives. They're saying that those people are liars. They can't remember 50 years. If they say, oh, I can't remember 50 years, surely it applies to everybody else. Why discredit other writers with their stupid responses and making themselves look fools? This is what they seem to have done. When you look at this oversight by Mr. Speck, it shows his incompetence and his ignorance and his amateurism. And if I'd have had Ed Brigel, the guy who I couldn't afford, I wouldn't be standing here now. I would have won my case, because Ed would have put my case to the judge in the correct manner that it should have put in, and he'd have wiped the floor with this Speck bloke. But this Speck knew my situation. He knew I'd got a barrister there who'd only just arrived on the scene. He knew my barrister didn't know a lot about anything, and he took a great advantage of it. Well, now look at those 65 paragraphs. We'll analyse them. I'll put a follow-on of the judgment, as I did Bonita Trimmer's witness statement, beyond the flat, but if you hold your laptop like a book, you should be able to read it quite easily, and I think there are sort of facilities for rotating this stuff anyway, so it should be quite easy to understand. But as I go through it with you, I'll itemise each statement, and I'll make my comments, and I'll show you the evidence which proves that this statement, this judge's assessment, this judge's judgment is just absolutely rubbish.